The ground shakes violently as the walls of the church crumble, sending dust swirling in chaos, but inside, a breathtaking miracle unfolds, an illuminated Eucharist suspended in air, glowing with divine light. Padre Antonio, unwavering in his faith, raises the host as the congregation gasps, their hearts torn between fear and awe. Outside, terror reigns as buildings crumble, yet within these sacred walls, hope ignites. What unfathomable power could transform despair into faith at this pivotal moment? You won't believe what happened next, but before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The air was tense in Borgo San Lorenzo, thick with anticipation and unease. It was the kind of stillness that enveloped the town just before chaos struck. On that fateful day, the sun shone brightly, misleading the townspeople into believing that all was well. However, deep within the earth, powerful forces were at play, just waiting to unleash their fury. Padre Antonio Martelli stood at the altar of the quaint church, his expression serene as he elevated the consecrated host, the sacred Eucharist glinting under the ornate chandelier. The gentle murmur of prayers filled the space, a soothing contrast to the mounting worries of the crowd outside. It was a typical day for the devoted parishioners, their faith anchoring them amidst the recent seismic tremors that had rattled the surrounding region. But the tranquility would be short-lived. A low rumble resonated from beneath their feet, a sound that should have been dismissed as distant thunder but was all too familiar. The whispers of fear, which had only recently begun to circulate among the townspeople, quickly transformed into alarm. As the tremors escalated, so too did the looks of terror etched on their faces. Suddenly, the earth convulsed violently, shaking the very foundations of the church. The sound of splintering wood and crumbling masonry filled the air. A gasp ran through the congregation as they gripped the pews, their hearts racing. The walls of the sanctuary shuddered, and dust cascaded from the ceiling like an impending storm. Parents huddled close to their children, eyes darting around the room, praying for safety amidst the chaos. Outside, the streets turned into a scene of horror. People screamed in panic, rushing to flee from buildings that began to crack and bend. The cacophony of falling bricks and shattering glass merged with the cries of dear ones, creating a heart-wrenching melody of fear. The fragile veneer of normalcy crumbled away like the edifices, revealing a raw undercurrent of dread that swept through the town. Inside the church, Padre Antonio, unwavering in faith, felt a divine calling wash over him. The trembling earth seemed inconsequential compared to the sacred moment unfolding at the altar. He held the Eucharist high in the air, allowing the golden light of the host to catch the attention of the panicked congregation. "Trust in God," he urged, his voice steady and resolute against the terrifying backdrop. "He is with us." As if in response to his faith, a miraculous moment began to unfold. The trembling of the earth paired with the growing silence as everyone inside the church turned their eyes towards the altar. The light emanating from the Eucharist intensified, casting a warm glow throughout the sanctuary. It was as if time held its breath. Outside, the earthquake's havoc continued, with buildings collapsing in disarray, catching families unaware. Yet inside the church, a strange calm began to settle, weaving through the terrified, praying souls. They witnessed a sight that threatened to defy all understanding. Before their eyes, the host began to float, suspended in mid-air amidst the chaos. Gasps of disbelief mingled with prayers of fervor as a golden aura enveloped the miraculous sight. Padre Antonio stood transfixed, a wave of peace washing over him. The looming dread that engulfed Borgo San Lorenzo seemed to dissipate within the walls of the church. The faithful tore their gaze from the destruction surrounding them to focus on the Eucharist, all written on each face. The crisis outside faded in significance as they collectively gasped at the divine manifestation unfolding before them. The air was filled with the palpable tension of a remarkable occurrence. The townspeople who had once rushed in fear now stood frozen, their hearts full of hope and wonder. Some raised trembling hands towards the Eucharist, wishing to touch the divine, while others fell to their knees, surrendering their hearts in reverence. Carlo Acutis, a 15-year-old with an insatiable thirst for understanding the Eucharistic miracles, would soon be intertwined with the extraordinary events unfolding in his hometown. He had joined his parents for Mass that day, unaware that the fabric of their lives would change forever in this very moment. The echoing tremors outside were eclipsed by an internal shift, faith igniting in the hearts of the congregation, inspired by the floating host. What would follow this moment of divine intervention? What impact would this miraculous event have on Carlo and those around him? Even as the violent shaking persisted, a quiet, budding curiosity began to blossom. The townspeople clung to their newly ignited belief, a flame of hope burning brightly against desperation. The true story was just beginning, and it would resonate far beyond the church walls and into the annals of history. The earthquake was relentless, shaking the very essence of Borgo San Lorenzo. Outside the church, the air was filled with an unsettling cacophony of destruction. Buildings groaned painfully, their structural integrity crumbling under the might of nature's fury. People spilled onto the streets, their faces pale with disbelief. Some clutched at each other, preserved the original language as they stumbled over debris and shattered glass, their only focus being survival amidst the terror. The town had never experienced such devastation. It had long been a place of serenity, where families thrived and laughter echoed through sunlit streets. Now, however, those familiar sounds were replaced by the haunting cries of fear and uncertainty. As the ground roared beneath them, desperate prayers arose from every corner, invoking safety, healing, and protection in a time of unimaginable peril. In the epicenter of this chaos, the astonishing sight of the Eucharist brought a stark contrast to the despair unfolding just outside the church. Inside, the warmth of hope enveloped the congregation, a sanctuary of faith amidst the calamity. They stood captivated, their eyes fixated on the golden light radiating from the suspended host, almost as if time had ceased to exist. It was a distant echo of calm in stark opposition to the madness outside. As townspeople began to gather at the windows of the church, they witnessed a surreal scene. Buildings buckled in front of their eyes while the church stood tall, a stronghold of faith that seemed unaffected by the chaos. An elderly woman gasped in disbelief as she clutched her rosary, tears streaming down her face. "It's a sign!" she exclaimed, her voice rising above the crashing sounds of the earthquake. "God is with us!" Outside, while the bricks and mortar of beloved homes crashed to the ground, the sense of desperation intensified. A mother, frantically searching for her child amidst the uproar, cried out, her voice piercing through the horror. Fear gripped the hearts of those who felt helpless. Yet threads of hope began to weave their way through the collective consciousness of the crowd. Could the miracle happening inside the church offer solace? Back at the altar, Padre Antonio raised his arms, commanding the attention of his flock. "Let us be united in prayer," he implored, his voice unwavering despite the turbulence surrounding them. "Turn your hearts towards God and ask for His mercy." His words were met with fervent nods. They clutched their prayer cards and rosaries tightly as they sent their pleas heavenward, hoping to prove their faith amidst the storm. Carlo watched wide-eyed as the sacred moment unfolded. His youthful perception danced between disbelief and wonder, struck by the juxtaposition of destruction and devotion. He felt a stirring within him, an awakening of the profound impact this moment could have, not just for him, but for the entire community. He knew instinctively that something monumental was occurring, something that transcended his understanding of faith. Suddenly, a particularly fierce tremor jolted through the grounds, causing the church's stained glass windows to rattle violently. The congregation flinched, instinctively fearing the worst. But as the dust settled, they felt an immediate surge of collective strength. In that moment, united by shared fear and faith, they realized there was a force greater than the world threatening to tear them apart. There was a divine presence among them. As the quake raged on, townspeople who had initially turned away in despair began to approach the church. Desperate for shelter and hope, they climbed over the rubble and ventured into the sanctuary. Parents rushed in holding their children, elderly couples supported by the strength of their neighbors, all seeking a refuge where solace was being manifested. As they crossed the threshold, they were enveloped by the warm light cascading from the elevated Eucharist, their souls igniting with renewed faith. By now, the church had become a beacon of hope, a hub of life in the midst of chaos. The once familiar faces of friends and neighbors transformed as they locked eyes, sharing silent promises of support and kinship. The enkindled faith among the faithful breathed life into the air, mingling with the cries of the distressed who filled the aisles. Yet, even as the church became a sanctuary, the destruction outside remained relentless. As the foundations of buildings crumbled one after another, the people of Borgo San Lorenzo faced a reality they could no longer ignore. Each rumble was a reminder of the precariousness of life. Yet, within the church, the miraculous event of the floating host acted as an anchor for their hearts, grounding them amidst the turmoil. The minutes stretched on like hours as the quake rolled through the land. But as hope flickered faintly, it burned as brightly as the golden light coalescing around the Eucharist. As every second passed in prayer and disbelief, a profound realization dawned upon Carlo. They were witnessing more than a mere miracle. This was a testament to the strength of their faith, a lifeline cast into a dark sea of fear and uncertainty. The church stood tall as the moment wore on, a fortress of faith against the trembling earth. Clinging to that flicker of divine assurance, the townspeople began to feel a shift, as if the merging of their unwavering prayers and the floating host could alter the very course of fate. What strength could they muster together in the face of such adversity? As the ground continued to shake, they braced for the worst, their spirits emboldened by the miracle manifesting within those unyielding walls. Little did they know that beyond surviving the earthquake, they were about to embark on a journey that would reshape not only their lives but the fate of their town. How would the community emerge from this turmoil, and what legacy would the events of this day leave for generations to come? The unfolding mystery had only just begun to reveal its depths, intertwining their lives with a miracle that transcended the ordinary into the extraordinary. As the powerful tremors rocked Borgo San Lorenzo, a breathtaking sight unfolded inside the church. The Eucharist, suspended in the air, radiated a golden halo that filled the sanctuary with divine light. Time seemed to stand still, capturing the hearts and minds of everyone present as they beheld a miracle in the making, a vision so profound it defied all rational explanation. Gasps of disbelief mingled with murmurs of awe as every eye gazed upwards. The host, seemingly suspended by an unseen force, shimmered like a star fallen from the heavens. Padre Antonio stood immovable at the altar, a figure of composure and grace, embodying the connection between heaven and earth. His heart raced with reverence, yet a calmness enveloped him as he recognized the weight of the moment, the promise of divine protection against the devastation surrounding them. Outside the church, the chaos continued unabated. The ground shook and buildings groaned under the stress of nature's wrath, their once proud facades shattering like glass. Yet within the sacred walls, the faithful found refuge and strength. They were drawn into a trance, the flickering light of the Eucharist illuminating their fears and transforming them into hope. One woman, standing at the front of the pews, lifted her child into her arms, the little boy clinging to her neck with wide-eyed wonder. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she whispered, "Look, my love, God is here with us." Holy whispers rippled through the congregation, and in that moment she infused her son with a conviction that would shape his lifelong faith. The sublime scene was not lost on young Carlo Acutis. As he observed the miracle unfolding, he felt his spirit alight with purpose.
He had dedicated his life to studying Eucharistic miracles, but never had he anticipated witnessing one so vivid and powerful. The memories of his research flooded his mind, intertwining with the reality of this very moment. This was not merely a spectacle, it was evidence of divine intervention, a sign that faith could turn the tide even in the face of despair.
The citizens inside the church began to form a bond that transcended their individual fears. Strangers reached out to one another, clasping hands and offering words of encouragement. "We are united," a voice rang out, sparking a fervor. The audience responded with an echoing affirmation, "We are united." In that affirmation, they found strength. Suddenly, amid the cries and tremors, a profound silence fell, punctuated only by the steady heartbeat of hope resonating through the room. The floating host flickered, casting dancing shadows on the faces of the faithful. Padre Antonio took that moment to speak once more. "This is a testament to our faith. The Eucharist is our shield. Though nature seeks to divide us, our unity in Christ will hold strong." His words were met with a roaring chorus of prayer, mingled with the belief that had begun to cycle between hope and despair. People knelt, some raised their arms towards the suspended host, spiritual defiance against destruction that threatened to overwhelm them. Each prayer seemed to strengthen the golden light that enveloped the Eucharist, a beacon shining brightly even in darkness. As they gathered together in devotion, an energy enveloped them, a shared understanding that transcended the visible chaos outside. Many fell into contemplative silence, eyes fixed on the radiant host that they believed held the divine promise. The power of faith was palpable. It became a force that seemed to buoy their spirits higher, lifting them above the turmoil of their situation. Carlo felt a rush of inspiration as he witnessed the power of collective faith. He thought of the stories he would someday tell, documenting this miracle in all its grandeur. "I will make sure the world knows," he vowed silently. He glanced around the church, captivated by the faces illuminated by the golden light. Each were reflections of the divine presence that was now unmistakably amongst them. Outside, the earthquake raged on, an unforgiving reminder of the fear that gripped the town. Yet within the church, an invisible force amplified their faith. A realization dawned upon them, a determination to stand together against adversity, emboldened by their unwavering trust in God. To some, the uncanny calm inside the church served as an antidote to the despair that seeped from the cracks of the devastated town. The lesson they were learning was profound. In times of dire crisis, unity through faith would pave the way for healing and renewal. And then, the moment that captured the peak of awareness unfurled. With a final violent jolt, the ground quaked ferociously, as if summoning every ounce of chaos within. Many braced themselves, anticipating the collapsing of the pillars or the flooding of harmful uncertainties. Yet, as if acknowledging their cries and prayers, the earth finally relented. With that relenting came a pivotal silence that swallowed the remnants of terror. The air thickened, charged with a different kind of energy, one of promise and assurance. Eyes turned toward the altar, where the host continued to glow with an ethereal light, undiminished by the turmoil that had transpired moments before. The gathered congregation collectively exhaled, a breath that signaled relief mixed with disbelief. As the quake began to ebb, people cautiously began to rise from their knees. Carlos felt it, the shift in the atmosphere, a sense of peace coupled with a fervent call to action. It was clear now that the miracle they had witnessed was more significant than a moment in time, but a foundational shift that could alter the course of faith in their lives and within their community. And so it was, in the heart of a trembling earth, the promise of hope stood defiantly illuminated by faith in the Eucharist, a testament to the power of unity that spoke to the souls of all who had gathered. Whispers of awe permeated the air as the townspeople looked towards one another, hearts renewed with love and strengthened purpose. What remained undetermined, however, was the future. What could this miracle herald for a town forever marked by the tremors of nature? Would their renewed faith lead to a lasting inspiration, demonstrating that even amid chaos, divine providence could unfurl in miraculous ways? They now sensed a journey ahead, a path marked not only by survival but by profound transformation. The echoes of the miracle would resonate far beyond the confines of their battered town, pushing the boundaries of their understanding of faith and hope deeper than they had ever imagined. As dawn broke over Borgo San Lorenzo, the picturesque town slowly revealed the scars of the earthquake. The ground had settled, but the remnants of destruction lingered like a haunting specter. Buildings lay in ruins, roofs caved in, and the streets were strewn with debris. However, amidst the rubble, a palpable spirit of resilience stirred within the hearts of the townspeople. They began to emerge from the church, and one by one they took tentative steps into the light of a new day. The congregation gathered outside the church, still awash in the divine light of the Eucharist they had just witnessed. It felt as though an invisible thread had woven them together, binding their individual stories into a collective narrative of hope. With eyes reflecting a shared sense of purpose, they embraced the dawn of a new chapter, recognizing the miracle that had unfolded within those sacred walls. "Together we can rebuild," urged Padre Antonio, standing firmly among the crowd. His voice carried a tone of determination that resonated with the hearts of the faithful. "It is both our duty and our privilege to honor the blessing we have received. The Eucharist has reminded us that while the physical may falter, our faith endures." With each passing hour, the townspeople began to gather the courage to salvage what they could from their homes and businesses. They worked side by side, lifting one another's spirits with shared laughter and camaraderie as they scavenged through the debris. Families formed teams, neighbors offered support, and old rivalries dissolved in the face of a collective mission to rebuild their community, stronger than before. As Carlo stepped out into the kaleidoscope of destruction, a fire lit within him. He held the stories of that day as treasures in his young heart. He witnessed the power of faith, how the light of the Eucharist had pierced through the shadows of despair. Carlo knew it was his duty to document these events, to ensure that the miracle would never fade from memory. From that day forward, Carlo began to conduct interviews and document the experiences of those who had gathered at the church. He carried his notebook everywhere, listening intently to the accounts of the townspeople, capturing their emotions and struggles. "The Eucharist saved us," repeated many voices, echoing his beliefs as he sketched, written words spilling onto the pages with fervor. Days turned into weeks, and the process of rebuilding commenced. Volunteers poured into Borgo San Lorenzo from the surrounding areas, drawn by the stories of the floating Eucharist and the indomitable spirit of the townspeople. They brought with them tools, supplies, and most importantly, faith. In those busy weeks, the church became not just a sanctuary, but a center of healing and hope. Padre Antonio and the community offered meals to those in need, set up temporary shelters, and organized prayer gatherings to guide everyone towards healing. The church itself remained a beacon, a place of divine refuge that welcomed the lost, offering support for the weary. Carlo documented these acts of kindness with zeal. He talked to Padre Antonio about the importance of sharing the story beyond their town, to inspire faith and resilience in others. The priest smiled, proud of Carlo's dedication. "You possess the gift of storytelling, Carlo. Use it well, and let it sow seeds of faith wherever you go." Inspired by those words, Carlo organized a community event to share their experiences, inviting neighboring towns to join them in celebration. Then came the day of the gathering. The town square transformed into a vibrant scene filled with laughter, music, and the aromas of shared meals. People from all over the region flocked to Borgo San Lorenzo, eager to hear the stories of the miracles witnessed, to share in the uplifting spirit of resilience. Carlo stood ready, his notebook filled with the stories that would mark this moment in history. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, Carlo took to the center stage. The crowd hushed, the anticipation palpable. He opened his notebook and spoke from the depth of his heart. What happened here is not just a miracle. It is a testament to the strength of divine love that binds us as one. When the earth trembled and chaos threatened to divide us, we found hope in each other. He recounted the moment of the floating Eucharist, relaying how fear transformed to faith, how community became unity. As he spoke, the crowd held on to every word, captivated by the honesty that radiated from his young spirit. If we can come together in the face of adversity, how much greater can we be when it is peace that greets us? Let this become our legacy, a commitment to stand as one, unyielding in faith, love, and hope. As he concluded, applause erupted, echoing through the streets of Borgo San Lorenzo. People wiped away tears, their hearts ignited with purpose. The gathering of support had seeded a movement in which more than rebuilding would take place. It was a rekindling of faith driven by a shared desire for connection, healing, and love. Days turned to months, and while physical wounds gradually healed,
The emotional scars ran deep. Yet the miracle had sparked a renaissance of faith that continued to blossom within the prisoners of despair. The local community became known across Italy for their resilience, hospitality, and their unwavering belief in the Holy Eucharist. As old and new faces flocked to the town, it began to emerge as a pilgrimage site for many seeking hope and divine intervention. The cathedral that had once faced the threat of chaos became a sanctuary embraced by the faithful. They traveled from afar, many drawn by the stories of the visible miracle of the Eucharist, now surrounded by acts of genuine kindness. In the hearts of the townspeople of Borgo San Lorenzo, hope rose like the dawn after a long night, illuminating not just their lives, but touching others in ways they could never have imagined. Carlo's documentation, now cherished by many, served as a reminder of the miracles that exist amid adversity, inspiring faith and fostering resilience wherever the stories were shared. The journey of healing was far from complete. However, the truth remained steadfast. The miracle they witnessed had ushered in a legacy of faith that would endure through generations. How would the power of that miracle continue to ripple through lives yet untouched by its light? The answer would rest in the hearts of those who dared to believe, determined to share the light of their experience long after the echoes of the earthquake faded from memory. The story of Borgo San Lorenzo had become a testament, a living narrative that would continue to unfold in the fabric of their community, binding them together as they walked forward in grace and purpose. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting Borgo San Lorenzo in hues of orange and gold, Carlo Acutis roamed through the streets of his beloved town. It was a place transformed, not just in physical structure, but in spirit. The miracle of the floating Eucharist had not only sparked hope, it had sewn the community together in a tapestry of faith and resilience. Carlo's heart raced with excitement as he prepared his next big project, a documentary that would encapsulate the essence of what his town had experienced. This was his passion, and he wanted to capture the stories of all who had witnessed the miracle, highlighting the impact it had on their lives. He understood that the testimony of his town could inspire countless others facing their own struggles. Equipped with a camera and an unyielding fervor, Carlo began to interview townsfolk and pilgrims alike. He approached an elderly gentleman who had traveled from a neighboring village. "What brought you here today?" Carlo asked, his tone warm and curious. The old man smiled, wrinkles dancing across his face. "I came to find solace," he replied, his voice soft yet confident. "I heard of the Eucharist, a miracle that shook lives. I've been searching for something to believe in again." Carlo's heart swelled as he recorded his words, understanding how universal the longing for hope could be. The man's story resonated with many like him, and it became clear to Carlo that their shared experiences were powerful bridges connecting people across oceans of despair. With each interview, the montage of heartwarming and sometimes heart-wrenching stories began to take shape. Families who had lost homes found new companionship among those who had also suffered. They shared meals together under the stars, their laughter mingling with chants of hope. The church continued to serve as a sanctuary, mirroring their strength and dedication. Carlo was particularly moved by a story shared by a young mother. "When the earthquake struck, I thought I had lost everything," she recounted, tears brimming in her eyes. "But I found community. I found faith. We rebuilt together." Each narrative he collected felt like a thread tying him deeper into the heart of Borgo San Lorenzo. On one particular evening, as dusk settled over the horizon, Carlo gathered a small group of townspeople to watch the footage he had compiled. They gathered in the church, the flickering candlelight casting gentle shadows against the stained glass. The sound of shared sighs and laughter filled the air as the essence of their stories unfolded on the screen. As he unveiled the documentary, it became a celebration of their resilience and faith. "You see, we survived," he said passionately, pausing for effect. "But it is the way we came together that is the miracle. This is our legacy." The room erupted in applause, the warmth of their camaraderie enveloping everyone present. The documentary became an emotional reminder that their shared experience had meaning, inspiring greater faith and stronger bonds. In the days following the screening, Carlo continued to share the documentary beyond their town. The word spread rapidly through social media as people gravitated towards the hope echoed in each frame of the film. Before long, media outlets contacted him, seeking to feature the story of Borgo San Lorenzo, a town reborn through faith and unity. Carlo relished the acceptance of their story at a national level, understanding that their journey would inspire others grappling with adversity. During one of his interviews with a local news station, Carlo spoke passionately about the power of faith and community. "This miracle isn't just ours," he said passionately. "It is a reminder that even in our darkest moments we can find hope. The flame of the Eucharist that illuminated our despair is now a guiding light for others." Each word seemed to ignite inspiration, resonating with those watching from afar, and he felt the ripple of faith expanding beyond geographical boundaries. Soon after, news of Borgo San Lorenzo reached international audiences, placing their little town on the map of spiritual pilgrimage. People traveled from distant countries, seeking the light of hope that had emerged from within. It turned into a remarkable phenomenon as visitors flocked to the very church that had witnessed the extraordinary, their hearts yearning for the same comfort that had so deeply touched the townspeople. Younger generations began to volunteer and participate in the movements that sprang forth, their actions echoing the same miraculous spirit. Life bloomed in ways that Carlo could have never imagined, and the town flourished with energy and vibrancy. As summer rolled into fall, and with every passing festival commemorating their divinely inspired journey, Carlo continued to document their blossoming community. The miracles they experienced remained not only a subject of celebration, they became a lived reality, a testament to faith that maintained its fervor. But the essence of the miracle remained grounded within their personal narratives, a unity formed by shared pain and joy. Those who had been touched by the extraordinary events of that day found purpose in continuing to spread their message of hope and belief. It became a cycle of giving and sharing, igniting sparks of kindness wherever they went. Finally, as autumn leaves began to carpet the streets, Carlo gathered the townspeople once more. Under the twinkling stars, he shared his final compilation of stories, the documentary complete, a beautiful reflection of their journey. "We are not just a town, we are a family," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Let this be a reminder to all of us, and to those who come after us. The light of the Eucharist ignited a flame within our hearts, and its glow shall guide us always." Carlo's heart overflowed with gratitude, knowing he had documented not just the miracle of the Eucharist, but the unyielding spirit of humanity. Their story was one of transformation, which transcended personal boundaries and connected people through faith, love, and community. And as they gazed into the night sky, they all now understood what had happened in Borgo San Lorenzo was indeed just the beginning of a legacy that would continue to ripple through time and inspire hearts for generations to come. What did you think of this story? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Click the video on the left to hear another story.